In an earlier lesson, we learned how to level our build plate using the built-in leveling feature on the FlashForge Finder 3. Now we're going to take a look at how to do an even finer grain leveling. The leveling that the machine does itself is perfectly sufficient if you're using a raft, and you may even be able to print without a raft depending on how close you got with your leveling procedure. But this is a way that you can really fine-tune your leveling, or at the very least check to see how close your leveling is. So we're going to create a test file that we're going to use to test our leveling. And to do that, in FlashPrint, I'm going to click File, Examples, 20 millimeter box. Now I'm going to go over to Scale and click Maximum. So the Maximum button with uniform scaling selected will automatically enlarge a print so that it fills the entire available print space. With uniform scaling still on, I'm going to bring this down so that it's not going right up to the very edges of the build plate. So let's say 90%. That's 171 millimeters on the X and Y. And now I'm going to uncheck uniform scaling, and I'm going to change the Z dimension to 0.30 millimeters. So it's going to be essentially one layer high. I can click Scale again to get rid of that. Now I'm going to click Start Slicing. The printer's fine. To speed up the printing process, I'm going to change the platform temperature to 40 so that we don't have to wait for the platform temperature to heat up. Then I'm going to click General, and you can see the first layer is already 0.3, so that should be fine because we only have one layer. But I'm going to go ahead and play it safe and change the other layer to 0.3 as well. For shells, I'm going to increase the shells to 5. So the outer walls will be 5 shells thick. And infill, I'm going to eliminate the top layer, the bottom layer, and all of the infill. Rafts, I'm going to make sure that the raft is turned off. So no. And under additions, I also do not want any pre-extrusion. That's the little line that is the first thing that's printed that starts the filament flowing before it even prints the raft. Okay, with all those changes now, I'm going to click Slice and Slice Preview. And you can see what I have is a hollow square. If you zoom into the lines, you can see that there are 5 shells. Printer essentially will start with the first shell and go around in this square shell by shell. And what we're going to be looking for is whether or not those lines that are next to each other melt together. If they're separate on the print bed, that means that the nozzle is slightly too far away from the print bed, and we can use the knobs in the front of the printer to raise the print bed slightly. If the lines are too squished and we're not getting this hard edge on the inside and the outside of the square, but we're getting a kind of wavy effect, that indicates that the print bed is slightly too close to the nozzle. So again, we'll want to use the knobs to very slightly lower the print bed. And the effect we're looking for is similar to the image that you see here on the screen. You can see it's a 6-minute print, so you can print it as many times as you need to get it just where you want. And you can even, if you see that things are going haywire from the very beginning, you can stop the print. You don't need to wait the full 6 minutes and adjust the knobs and start it again. So I'm going to click download, and instead of 20-meter box, I'm going to call it test square 6 minutes, save it to my USB drive, and now I'll go to my machine and start the print in the usual way. And while it's printing, I'll be keeping an eye on the layers and making adjustments with the knobs in the front. The print has begun printing. You can see the first shell being laid down now, and it's sticking fine, so that's good. If your lines are not sticking to your plate, then you'll want to very slightly raise the platform toward the nozzle using the knobs on the bottom. But my line seems to be sticking fine, so now is the real moment of truth when the second shell starts printing. I'm looking to see if those two shells are merging together, and they are in this case. So I'll wait to see if the back two shells merge together, and they are. As I said a moment ago, if those two lines are separated by a gap, then that's an indication that the print bed needs to be raised toward the nozzle. And you might have to just do one side or the other, or both knobs. In this case, it looks like both sides are good and the front and back are good as well. So I'm spot on, and I didn't do any fine leveling. This is the first time I print this test square on this machine after re-leveling the bed for the flexible steel sheet. So you might get lucky and hit it the first time. The other thing besides the lines separating that I'm looking for is to make sure that the lines that are being laid down, the shells, are crisp and straight. There's no waviness to them. It doesn't look like any filaments sort of being squirted out to the side. And if that were the case, then that would be an indication that the print bed is just a little too close to the nozzle. So in that case, you would use the knobs to lower the print bed just a tiny bit. If you're having major issues at the beginning of the print, feel free to hit the stop button and clean everything up and then start again. Adjust the knobs whichever way you need to and start the print again. The whole print, as you can see, is only one layer. It's printing layer 1 of 1, and the whole thing is just 6 minutes, so it's not too long anyway. But when it's done, we should end up with a nice solid square where all the shells are adhering to one another, but not deforming in any way. So the print has finished, and it's lowering down. You can see the finished print. Now you can take a photo of your nice, perfect test square and post it to the class discussion topic. You can see that the lines are merged together. They don't come apart. When I remove the print, and if you look at the other side of the model, you can see the lines again merged together. I don't know if you can tell from the video, but if you're looking at your own print, if you printed on the steel sheet, you'll detect a slight bumpiness to the bottom of the model, and that's because of the texture of the build plate. So once you get a square like the one that I've shown, you can be pretty confident that you've got a very level bed, and you can probably safely print directly on the build plate without needing to use rafts for most of your models. You'll still need rafts for some models, especially when you're using supports, but for models that have a flat bottom, you won't need to use a raft. And that saves on time and a little bit of plastic. But feel free to continue to use a raft if that's working for you and you feel more comfortable with that. But for sure, when you're using supports, the supports are not likely to stick to the build plate on their own, so we'll definitely need to use a raft in that case. And we'll look at supports in a different lesson.